Hello, my name is John Mayer, and I'm the Executive Director of CALI, the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. The video you are about to watch is from the annual CALI conference held at the University of Michigan School of Law in Ann Arbor, Michigan on June 4th and 5th, 2026. Most U.S. law schools are members of CALI. CALI publishes over 1,400 interactive tutorials that teach the law to law students. Faculty can also use LessonLink to create formative assessments using CALI lessons. CALI publishes casebooks by paying law faculty to write and review books that can be adopted in many courses in law school. These books are free to download from our website, or print versions can be purchased at near cost. You can download the PDFs or even the Microsoft Word versions of most of our books and add your own commentary before distributing to your students. $300 casebooks are a thing of the past, and adopting one book from CALI saves you more than your entire institutional membership. If you would like to learn more, email me at jmayer@cali.org. I would be happy to visit or zoom into your school to talk about CALI.
All right, good morning. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come see my presentation. I really appreciate it. The first thing that I'm going to do is take this jacket off. So I'm certainly glad that I packed it and learned how to fold it. Yeah, I worked with the tech already about that. He said this is the best it could get. He took all these lights down already and said that there is no way to adjust the screen brightness. There's the Tech 4 Michigan law. So I tried to do that for us. All right. Once again, my name is Michael Dickerson. I used to be the system administrator for the University of Richmond School of Law. This last Monday, I'm now the system and applications lead. So I've got to remember to tell you all that, right? Because I worked hard to get that done the last year. My presentation is from idea to implementation, designing simplicity through vibe coding. And what this is we used to have an internal seating chart tool built by my predecessor, who was a legal librarian. He taught legal research, but he was a tinkerer in regards to programming, or just enough to be dangerous, right? He built the internal seating chart tool that everybody loved. And so when he retired, he did tell me that his code was several years old and that if I tried to migrate it to something, I would have problems. So this is how the story of SpiderSeats came to be. I used it to build a production level collaborative tool. I used the approach of vibe coding to speed up the development, and I solved a real world problem that we had. Of course, we'll get into some particulars here. We did a server migration a couple years ago to the latest OS for a Microsoft server. And the previous seating chart tool was written in PHP 4, and we were trying to convert it to PHP 8.2. So we took it behind the barn, right? And didn't allow us to do that. So we didn't have any sort of analytics or anything built in to the tool to see how many people were using it. However, when we took it offline, everybody used it, right? And they told us how disappointed they were that we didn't have this tool. So the administrative staff helped with this with the professors. So they did not have a replacement tool with that. And what they did is they resulted to a manual process. They would print out every student's picture, cut it out with scissors, and then use a glue stick to put it on a blank seating chart and then scan it as a document and send it to the teacher. So they resulted to what they knew and had to do to get this going, but it was always in the back of my mind that I could do better for them. So the decision was to build versus buy. So I researched multiple tools, commercial level products, as well as mom and pop shop products. I didn't know they were mom and pop until I requested a a meeting and one person came on screen. He was the owner operator, and it was a side job, right? And however, while that tool actually did look promising, my boss said, I don't feel comfortable with that because if I'm making this up, Scott in Nebraska doesn't want to host the seating chart anymore. What do we do? So it was real concern there. Small scale school tools didn't seem to fit. Commercial products were okay, but the one that everybody seemed to like came in at an estimate of $12,000, and anything above $10,000 is a formal request for proposal through IS, and I didn't want to deal with that, right? We have to ask for permission, and we don't necessarily need all the bells and whistles. So the conclusion that I thought was building one from scratch. And the reason why I picked vibe coding is because I recently graduated with my master's in liberal arts, and one of my final classes was a course in AI, writing with and about AI, and we read an article that referenced vibe coding, and I said, what's that? And I went and read another article, and it seemed like this could help bridge that gap between a tool I needed and what I could build. So that's how this came to be. The vision was what SpiderSeats needed to do. The guiding principle for everything was simple user experience built on thoughtful behind-the-scenes design. So what I wanted to do, and I've seen success in before when I built dashboards and things of that nature, is using a breadcrumb trail to direct the user to the end goal. It allows them to feel accomplished and find it on themselves, right? When I've set the path out in front of them, instead of them fighting for that end result. The core functionality was web-based drag and drop seating with support for multiple room layouts. We have 12 different classrooms at the School of Law in Richmond. Also, it was built for real use. We have a student directory. It's about 410 students, give or take. We'll add to that, since this was the first year we used it. It will increase for another 150 or so when the 1Ls come in this fall. It also allows me to maintain this long-term because I'm the only developer on it. So the approach with vibe coding, and if you don't know what vibe coding is, it's AI-assisted development, where the intent is to describe in natural language to the LLM that generates the implementation. So what I did was I figured out what platforms I wanted to use, what architecture I needed to do, and I had to learn that before I built this tool, right? And we'll get to that in a moment. I'll talk about my tech stack. My goal was to simply describe the overall tool to AI, and it would build it. I was the architect, and it was the engineer. And I approved or denied what it did, but it did the work, right? I came in and fixed things at the end. So it accelerated development for me, but I also was in control and responsible for the outcome, right? I had to review things, test things, and ultimately what I said goes, not the other way around. And the tech stack that I decided to choose was Next.js, Tailwind, TypeScript, Vercel for deployment, Supabase for the backend database, and Cursor for my development environment. If you don't know what Cursor is, it's a fork of VS Code. It works similar to that. And I use the built-in chat window for that on the auto mode. I didn't select the model. I just allowed it to pick whatever it needed for the task at hand. So the infrastructure, this was what I call the database debate. We manage students' information, user information, class data, and security and control was essential. So the student data that we use is first, last name, graduation year, and a picture. So it's not anything that's in the back-end system. It doesn't have anything tied to their records, anything official. User data, which was the admin assistants and some of trusted people that I deployed it for testing. We use their first, last name, and their email address, and that's it. Classroom data is just the room name, the room number, and the amount of seats that we have. We have a classroom similar to this, so each one had a number 1 or a 2, things like that. I decided to pick Supabase for the online database because it was a batteries included backend that had everything to do with it under the hood. Authentication, Postgres database, storage, APIs, admin tools. It was really great. However, the one thing that I found that I had to really address was the fact that I was putting student information and user information in Supabase online, right? And while it is secure with row-level security is what their protocol is, I didn't necessarily want to beg for forgiveness, and ask for permission type thing. So once I got a test site working with throughput and different things, I decided on a self-hosted Supabase instance where I downloaded the entire database, installed Docker, and ran it through that. And that allowed me to have greater control and portability for the entire project. If need be, the entire project lives on my laptop, period. Nothing else, no server. And also this brought into how was I going to deploy it to the end users? So the gateway, tunneling into production, and this is how I bridged the gap between my laptop and the users. So I used a Cloudflare tunnel to securely connect the local Supabase to the back end to the live front end. Vercel was that deployment of choice, and it allowed that bridge to be built with their protocols. So the key takeaway, as I mentioned before, was a portable infrastructure, Docker, local Supabase instance, where I could maintain security and also keep it manageable for the solo developer, which is me. So this is the core of the product. I call it the room designer. Now, I only design the rooms once, and they're static after that. We're not changing the layout of the rooms. So when a user comes in, they're not going to be designing a room. They're going to be using a room to build a seating chart. So, however, for the purposes of this, I'm telling you from my point of view, that's the differentiation of there. These are some small screenshots here, and I'm going to go through this with you. So, just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yep, so I didn't. It's great. So once you log in, this is from my point of view, I'm the only admin on the site. And everything you see was in my head and the vision that I had. And before I get into the particulars, I want to point out that when I had this idea, it was a year ago. I proposed it to my boss. We have a 4-person IT team at the School of Law. And then we have a dean of the library, which is the big boss. And we had a meeting, and I said, hey, I'd like to talk to y'all. Told it to my boss. She had already heard it. And we told the big boss, and he said, this sounds great. And we do not have a lot of to-do items in the summer, right? It's kind of light, everybody's working, so it's a perfect time to build projects. So I took a shot at it, right? I had the idea in my head after I read that article, but then I had to figure out what that meant, right? So I had to research the tech stack, I had to learn how to use Cursor, I had to figure out all of these things and how a developer would interact with the tools. I use Lovable and Replit for their free tier access to give the same prompt to and generate a working prototype that was far from this, knowing that the drag and drop functionality could work, it could look the way I saw it in my head. Then, once I had my tech stack solidified, I dug in deeper, right? I expounded on that prompt, and we started to come up with a layout. So everything you see from the navigational bar, the buttons, how the rollovers, the images used are all choices that I made and described in plain English to the AI, and it built it for me. So when a user comes into the site, they do not have access to students or user data. They only have access to rooms and charts. As me, I have the admin credentials. I get everything, so I'm going to show you that within reason here. For the rooms here, when we go to this dashboard, we see that we have 12 rooms. We have 12 active rooms, 12 total rooms, 12 templates were used to build that, and total seats available are 508. These are all the rooms that we have available with the number of seats that they provide in each one. I'm going to give you a couple examples. This is 102. This is one of our largest classrooms. As you can see, it's similar to this here. I didn't necessarily need to go into the granular details of putting tables and stuff like that. So how this comes to be is that students in our environment come in the first week of school, they pick a seat that they like, and they tend to feel secure in that seat. They feel comfortable, they feel confident, and they carry that seat throughout the semester. So it was kind of wild to me that assigned seats are a thing in law school, but not from the professors want. It's for the students who feel secure there, like I mentioned. So what happens is Michael, the professor, comes in. I hand out a blank seating chart that you see here. Everyone puts their name in the spot that they're sitting. That piece of paper goes to their admins. Their admins come in, build the seating chart, and then give it to the professor. And then, so it also becomes a tool where Michael doesn't necessarily see David for 2 or 3 classes in a row. Well, we know he's a 1L student. Is he overwhelmed? Is he doing okay? We have our dean of students could reach out to him, do maybe not a wellness check, but check in and make sure they're acclimating okay, and they get to know the person, faces, names, seats. And a 171 is a traditional layout with tables. Each one of these have a long table in front of it. Also, one thing I'd like to point out, our newest classroom is 150. So that just came online a couple years ago. The law school finished a 6-phase, $30 million innovation. So we built a new classroom in our outside of our commons area. However, for this layout, for the seats here, I'd like to point out that the how to use area gives a few instructions for a user to come in and exactly how to use this tool if you're brand new to it. So I wanted it to be as transparent as possible what you could do with the tool. I didn't need to necessarily have the users with a huge learning curve. Also, the student directory feeds right into the student directory I showed you before with the tab. You just start searching a first or last name, and then the result bubbles up to the top. There's only one Michael Dickerson, there's only one Santa Claus, there's only one Easter Bunny, right? And so that will come up with their profile card. Will have their face and their first and last name. You drag and drop that profile card onto a yellow seat and it turns green. That's where they're sitting. If you mess up, you just click the green again, it removes them from the seat and it goes back to yellow. Once you're done and building out a layout that you like, you hit save, and then I've identified certain protocols or certain data points that are going to be the same all across the board. Professor's name, the class name, the semester, and the year, and the section. And that gets stored in the database, and then later on, the admins will know, oh, I built that for Professor Jenkins, underwater basket welding, right? And it's going to be great. Summer of 26, it's going to be the elective, right? So, or if you wanted to print to PDF, I allowed that feature to come in. I tried to do an export to PDF feature, and it broke the entire site. At that point, I really got serious about learning how to interact with GitHub. And I had a repo before, right? I knew what GitHub was. I had pushed up things before, but I never had actually used it as a developer to go up and down, branches, so forth and so on. So it took me, from that one command, it took me 2 days to get back to what you see. And then I just said, you know what? They've kind of perfected it. Print to PDF is a thing. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. And, you know, my heartache and stress level last year works out to where I can tell this in a fun way today, but those 48 hours weren't the greatest. 128 is just another layout. We've got various layouts, traditional ones, more conventional with tables and chairs. All right, so the interaction, I've already touched on it a little bit, the drag and drop magic. And so you search for a student's ID, their profile card comes up, you simply drag and drop it over to a yellow seat, it turns green, and then you're good to go. Real-time state updates with React provide immediate visual feedback to the user of the site, which is the green versus the yellow, It's the lock mechanism where they snap into the seats. And then TypeScript and AI-assisted development helped me manage coordinate transforms, edge cases, and overall reliability. It allowed that precise location aspect on the site that I needed. So the directory showcases faces and seats. And so what I found was Michael Dickerson really doesn't tell anything. However, if I put a photo to that, which will identify the student in the seat, it humanizes the seating chart a little bit more. And I took this from my predecessor. He had laid the foundation and the groundwork. I just improved upon it. And the layouts that you just saw are what his old tool was, essentially. I had printed to PDF copies of that. And when I went to build a room, I uploaded that PDF and said, build this room. And it got 80% of the way there. However, in some instances, I would say, take seat 47, down 10 pixels and right 10 pixels, right? Until I got the arc that I wanted or everything kind of fit in the same spot. Lazy loading, smart sizing, and optimized uploads ensured that I had a smooth experience on the site, because if the site is slow, to the user, it's broken, period, right? And I don't want that to be their lasting interaction with myself. Or if they're in the pinch and they're trying to complete a task, my tool doesn't get in the way. So the templates, with building rooms a smarter way, was what I just mentioned a moment ago. I converted PDFs to JPEGs and uploaded that into the chat session, and I had the same prompt for every room. Then once I had that, I refined them manually, and it saved development time to avoid any sort of hard-coded approach. The previous tool, every seat location was a CSS math problem. So anytime that we would have to add seats or renumber seats, it became a real issue. And so I'm glad to not have to deal with that. And I had a nice template for, there's consideration of bringing a few more areas online as potential classrooms if we have different class sizes. Our dean is actually leaving at the end of this month after a 15-year tenure. So she had started that project with my boss to see what it would take to implement the tech and turn those around if needed. Kind of, I think there's either 2 or 3 areas that might be converted. So we want to be ready for them to come online. So I allowed the seating charts with the prompt that I have. It'll be easy to bring those up. No, not a problem at all there. So the output I've referenced before, saving and printing. So I captured standard elements of the class that I had mentioned before, saves it in the database. You can also edit that room or the name of it later on in your charts page as a user, or me as the administrator have global control to see what every chart was made in the tool. So that just created descriptive file names and allowed the archives a little bit easier to manage. And I also mentioned how bad I messed the site up when I tried to build and export to PDF function. So I'll print to PDF for the win right there. So the launch, anxiety and adoption. So what I did was I had a meeting with all the end users and told them that I hadn't forgotten about them and that I knew that they still had this pain point. And when I say users, I'm talking about 3 people here, right? This entire thing was built for 3 people. With addition to their boss makes it a 4th and the dean of student a 5th, right? So give or take 5 people, that's it, all in, and me, right? So I wanted to see if I could do this. So they really responded positively to that and understood that someone did care about their experience in their roles, and the acceptance and excitement really helped me to understand that I was on the right track and I was doing something that would better the school overall. I launched the tool last fall for 2 weeks. This tool is only live for 4 weeks a year. 2 weeks at the beginning of the semester, 2 weeks or fall semester, and 2 weeks at the spring semester. It doesn't necessarily need to be any more than that. And why I mention that is essentially this laptop acts as an on and off switch for the data. So when those 2 weeks come around, I fire this thing up at 9 a.m., I take it down at 4 p.m., you have those at times to access and build your charts. They don't necessarily, this doesn't call for a tool that needs to be online all the time. And if you happen to need a seating chart, you just give me an email, ask me, and I'll fire it up. Simple as that. Then you can come in and build whatever you need. And they seem to like that approach. Once the initial launch happened, I sent out a feedback survey, and I used AI to build that feedback survey as well. And the results came back fairly positive, and some of the same issues that I knew that were going to be a problem were also identified as well. So the survey focused on usability, features, performance, and satisfaction. Users really enjoyed the ease of use, the drag and drop functionality, and the professional print output, and the overall time that it saved them for using glue sticks and construction paper. Overall, the feedback focused on performance improvements and highlighting a tool that worked but could be made even smoother. So when I looked at version 2, I decided to approach it with an eye of refinement over Flash, and I made sure that performance was there and infrastructure was nice and tight. And I also took the opportunity to change some of the elements of the UI UX based on the feedback of the users. And when I did this, I realized that it was a team effort, both from my point of view as well as the admins. It said it allowed SpiderSeats to evolve from a tool I built to a tool we're shaping together. So I allowed the users to take a bit of ownership there, and they seem to enjoy that part. So what did Vibe Code enable? So it sped up repetitive work while I made sure that the UI and UX approaches were rapid and allowed me to explore things. As I said earlier, I didn't necessarily come into knowing that I could build this site. It was, if I do, then what, right? I retain full responsibility of the entire architecture, the security, the testing, and all the design consistencies. AI doesn't make any choices for me. It just builds it to my specs of what I've described with plain English. So this allowed faster code generation and allowed me to increase my need for judgment and responsibility as the owner of the tool. So the advice, practical vibe coding in action. So if you are interested in this approach, and whatever tool, whatever idea, whatever project that you may have, I know there's some other sessions that are going to be talking about this while we're here. I'm excited to see what my colleagues are building. I know that the past year that the best thing that AI has given me is community. So I've looked out a year ago and reached out to some mentors and said, hey, I'm getting ready to graduate. How do I keep these hobbies and these engagement mentally? And they said, you need to find a community. And so I've leaned into AI for the better part of 4 years, within the last 12 months, really heavily with some local groups, things like that. And it's allowed me to meet other people that are interested in this who became mentors, and those mentors have become friends. And the really great part is that I can sit and have this conversation with them, and they don't gloss over on me, right? They can engage back. They know what I'm talking about. So it's really nice. Also, I would suggest that you design for results, forgiveness, and speed. You create interactions that are responsive, safe, and easy to use. And from the user's perspective, that allows them to feel that the tool is working. You don't get that frustration of something may not be quick enough because, like I mentioned, something that's slow equals broken in the user's eyes. So the overall takeaways and lessons I learned from SpiderSeats, it turned this manual, error-prone workflow into a reliable, collaborative tool. I was allowed to think critically of this project and this problem that I wanted to fix. Allowed me to dig into my design elements that I liked. I've got a history in web design, but I never formally held that title in a job. It was also like, hey, I'm good over here, but hey, I could do this for you. And so this allowed me to build something from the ground up, and I could be responsible for every element. And also understanding users and allowing them to be collaborative on it and have ease of use from start to finish was the real winner here. Now, we all want to talk about money and time and to see how much this costs, right? I mentioned, I looked at tools, some were $12,000, some were a couple $100, some were kind of in the middle, right? Overall, once I had the idea, solidified the tech stack, what I did after I built this tool is I went back and had AI generate a report. If I use the traditional API build for this, and when I say that, I'm referencing Cursor because they have their internal models, it would have costed between $2,000 and $2,500 to build this tool. Using the Cursor free plan, it would have been between $600 to $700. Cursor Pro, and these are consumer levels, 5 to 6. My setup was free 99 because if you sign up for the educational benefit for Cursor, you get their pro level support for a year for free. Copilot also has a similar model. When I did this last year, you get their pro level for 2 years for free. My intention for signing up for both was building the tool in both and see which one was better. However, one was hard enough to understand instead of rebuilding this. So what it did cost me was 75 days to build from idea to implementation overall, and then version 2 in roughly about 15 days, so 90 days total. And it cost nothing but my time. It was an idea that I wanted to do, and my boss has signed off on it. I'd like to give a little nod to the dean of the library. He also said, hey, when this works, right, not if you get it there, why don't you talk about building this out into a presentation perhaps and proposing it at different conferences. This is the 4th time I've attended Cali, the first time I've presented. There's another conference called ACCS VA that's in Virginia, and it's a tech conference for all the colleges of Virginia. And so I presented this in March. So when I finished today, the idea and goal that I had a year ago has been met, of building the tool, putting myself out there, putting myself in front of you and talk about my passion and showing you how I'm leveraging the next step of what my opportunities at Richmond Law will be. So this is not only a project that I build, it's also very goal-oriented, and it helps me feel like I'm seen, accomplished, so it's the community aspect there as well. All right, so I appreciate your attention. I'm going to transition to my laptop now to give you a live demo because what could go wrong, right? But that's all right. I've got some information here, a QR code. This will take you to my site. You can get in touch with me. You can look at all the notes that I have, the script that I wrote that I didn't follow that's on this screen right here because that tripped me up in March. So I just went off the cuff today. And I'll be happy to present now. Thank you so much. All right, I'll let you do your thing. Yep. That's what I need to share right there. Entire screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the landing page for SpiderSeats. Like I mentioned earlier, everything here was designed and thought about with extensive detail, colors, logos, everything. Right here, if you're a new user, you would come to the sign up modal. You have the first name, last name, email, and your password. If you already have an account, perhaps, I've got a link here. You can go to the sign in, and if you've also forgotten your password, you can reset it here. I'd like to point out that all of this, sign up, log in, password reset, is running through Supabase. They have the authentication built in. So if you also, before I move forward, everything's locked down on each page, right? So you can't get into anything unless you sign in. I'm going to sign in under the admin profile so you can see the full tool. As I mentioned before, the users do not have the ability to look at student data or user data. Okay, so here's the login screen, similar to what I had a little bit earlier. This is a little, I felt that it was appropriate to welcome someone back and not just say, hey, you're here. Just a little blurb about managing all aspects of SpiderSeats, Richmond Law seating chart. And I'd like to point out that only I get the banner and the crown that says administrator, right? It's because why not? There's two ways to get to every site, or excuse me, every page. Top navigation and the panels on that you see on this dashboard. So it's two doors into the same house, right? So we log in, we have a student directory here. We have full ability to filter in through different years. We can clear that filter, and we can also look at certain stuff. This is all my dummy data. And as I said before, it bubbles up to the top. I always have a dashboard anchor button here so we can get back, or you can click the top. In user management, these are all the users that have opened accounts on the site, whether they're regular users or the 3 to 5 admins I talked to you about. They have been in this tool. And one of the things I like to point out here is that in V2, I added the last login because one of the things I didn't want to happen was you come to me and say, you know, this tool is terrible, never works. When's the last time you logged into it? Well, you know, I haven't been in it, right? I just, the week you log, you know. So now I can say, oh, the last time you were here, I've changed this or I've done that. So it's a little bit of, you know, show your work, if you will, that they're in the tool and I can help them properly. So we go back to the dashboard. And then here's the room configurator. Same thing that I showed you before. So I'm going to go into a few things here. Just in 101, it's our biggest class. I think it's 96 seats or something. However, I'm not going to do a demo here. I just want to show you the layout like I said before. We'll go back, and then we'll just pick a smaller seat. Let's see. Let's do 150. That's nice. So I'm going to use my dummy data. So Michael comes up, you just drag and drop, and things turn green, right? And you'll have a sheet, right, that the students have put their names on, and you know where it goes. When you hit save, the save modal comes up. This is also done with Supabase. It's the same look and feel as the sign in and the reset password modals that I have. So there's a little bit of understanding there. Oh, I've seen that before. I'm comfortable with that. And these are the data points that I described earlier, that once you put these in and save it, then it goes into not only the all charts bucket, but also your charts bucket. So if your user comes in and they go to the charts page, they can only see the 10, 15, whatever number of charts that they built. On my end, I see all of mine and all of yours. If you want to remove a student from the seat, you just click it again and they are removed. And then if we go to the charts page, here are my seating charts at the top that I've showed you, and then the seating charts that were created at the bottom. Two things that I added in version 2 here was I added the created timestamp and the updated timestamp. So as you can see on this one here, 329, I created it on August 21st, 2025, but then when I was working on it for version 2, I updated on January 6th. So I thought those data points were nice to see, not only for myself, but also the user. So one of the things here is that since it's stored, you can come back to it and view that layout. At this point, you can add or remove students and then save it, and it saves another version of that. Here, I'm going to go to print. And one of the things that I found at this part of the project is that it's not the greatest aspect ratio. It's a little tight. This is the second time that I wiped the site out trying to fix it. And I had to spend 48 hours getting myself back to a working version, GitHub for the win, right? And that my pain equals a better presentation. So the thought that I had there was why reinvent the wheel there? All you need to do is scale it up to whatever percent that you want. 125 is obviously too much, but 115 is nice, right? That way everybody knows how to change print settings. And if not, that's an easy learning curve, right? I'd like to point this out as we saw before. So if I go back to print, you see how this is on both pages here? For some reason, it pops it to another page unbeknownst to me. If you click on current page, it immediately gets rid of that. I don't know why. It's also not something I'm going to try to figure out. I think that might be overkill and just put me in a situation that might mess up. So we'll go back here and then print to PDF. It's the same thing. So once we just change that to current, then you see that PDF. And also at the top, you have the file name at the very top, a little bit of a blurb of where we are, the date that it was created or referenced, and the room. If we click cancel here, and we go back, and it's back to the charts page. Go back to the dashboard, and the last thing I'd like to point out is I've got a little identifying icon here that says Michael and your level of access. For someone else, it would say their name and then user for access. And then we sign out, and you're back to being locked out fully and completely. At this point, I'll be happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you for your time. Yes. Yeah, that's a great point. Let's see if I can show you real quick. So I was told to repeat the questions. So the question was, can I show how a student info was being put into the tool? And I should have kept this up, but. Yeah, so that's a great question. So we have roughly 150 students a year coming in, but if you simply go here, so let me clear that out a little bit, but you just simply go to add, first name, last name, graduation year, and then I browse and I select a picture that is provided for me from admissions. Part of their admissions process is collecting a photo, and then I have to do that 150 times. So there is a potential for a batch enrollment. However, I don't want to fix that's not broke. So it doesn't take me very long to upload 150 things. And it also allows my ADHD and my OCD to shine because I am in full control of that. And my two superpowers get to flex their muscles, right? So great question. Yes. Yes. Sure. Yeah. So the two questions were, one, what is my time cost? I have not done that calculation. However, it would be pretty quick to do for the hours that it took. How, and I would have to go back to what it costs for a system admin versus a system and applications lead because they're now different. However, no, I do not have that there, but that's great. I would love to find that and share that with my bosses. The other question was whether I had a preference over Lovable or Replit and how I thought the vibe coding was. So AI in the past couple years, especially the last year in regards to this sort of development, for me, it feels like it's been drinking from a fire hose a little bit, and I can't keep up with the tools. The only reason I chose Lovable and Replit is because Lovable was on a roll, right? And a lot of people could do it. Replit was just another version of that, right? And so those two actually were the easiest to like sign up for a free account and get right into the chat and build a working demo. They both were fairly similar. I didn't prefer one over the other. However, what I had trouble doing is I was probably going to go with Lovable and proposing that to the dean of the library. Hey, can I have a subscription to Lovable? He asked what Lovable was. And so there was a little bit of an explanation there. And I used them for a working demo, but then once again, I allowed my OCD to override the selection and I made sure Cursor was my development environment. What that did was allow me to have an IDE, both files, previews of those files, and a chat bot that was similar to Lovable. And with modern day desk setups, I have 3 monitors so I can have Cursor on the left and the web page up on the right. I can see it build in real time. And so I don't necessarily have to have it in the Lovable web page where it's doing that in a browser window. Thank you. Yes. Great question. So the question was, is there future plans to add this to Active Directory? In our environment, we do not use Active Directory. We use Banner Web. That is something that's held both from the registrar's office and IS. At this time, there is no plans to bolt onto that because then that would bring in IS scrutiny, and we don't necessarily need to have that level of support there. So we've made that a conscious decision not to, and we just keep it in the Supabase environment. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So what I did was I used all the sessions in unison and told AI to look through all of our chat history and identify like 20 different points and tell me what those points were. Once those points, and I'm just using 20 as a catch-all, right? Once those points were identified, then I worked on, hey, what questions would be good to gauge user impact? So I use it in the same thing. I use a Cursor chat session to do that. And then once those questions were identified, I built it out in Qualtrics, which is our survey method of a Richmond law. Other people use other things. However, I'm the law school admin of Qualtrics, so I have that. I built it in there. And so it was both understood that we use that, so it's familiar to the users. And then it wasn't like a super heavy lift. It was like, how did you like the UI? 1 through 5, right? And you pick what you liked. So I didn't allow them to get too granular with their explanations. I put limits on the questions and the answers. However, I did provide them opportunities to give real feedback towards the bottom. Like, what did you like? What would you want, right? I couldn't figure out all the stuff there. And the biggest thing was speed, right? Slow equals broke. And there were some instances where people were having slow load times. I'd go to their office and they were, right? For me, it was working fine. Actually, the reason why this came up today, right? And I'm using it on my laptop is because it was slow on this computer. And interacting with it here would have had a bad product for you. So I fired this up knowing I'd have to sever the connection here, but I would allow you to see the actual tool. And I think this, showing you the tool in action, finishes this presentation off like, oh, I get it. I see the arc, right? Idea to implementation. So hopefully that came across. And I'd be happy to share both the survey link with you as well as the results. There's nothing in there that I can't. And then that way you can look at it for yourself. Anyone else? Awesome. Thank you again so much. Like I said, this is both a personal goal for me, and I'm proud to be here with you all. And thank you for taking the time to come listen to me talk. That means a lot. Thanks.
Your demo wasn't online.
It's okay. It's all right.
I mean, if you want, you can take some time. You can run the demo. If I can let you promote you to, I can give you a link to get you into a Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to like record a demo, so it'll be on YouTube.
Yeah.
You're still sticking around.
Okay.
Start doing that.
Yeah. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me take this. Should I keep this on?
Yeah. Just tell if you're still online, you want to see a demo, but instead try to set it up. So.
Okay. Sure. All right. Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
Upgrade position.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Is that going to create more expectations for broader canvas to work on essentially? Because I can see other little utilities that would be useful for faculty and their assistants.
Yeah.
It could come directly from this or could.
Potentially, we have a small 4-person IT team at the law school, so this would never get to the IES, but for our community, we could bolt on things. However, we haven't had that discussion yet. Also, we kept everything with the admins, and we've not put it to there's only one professor that knows about it. However, this has also garnered some attention school-wide. And there's been a couple articles written about it, about how we're utilizing AI and what we're doing to build things. And okay, this niche tool works for Richmond Law, but it might not work for the business school, right? That's okay, right? Because I didn't build it for them. But it can open up a dialogue. What's the law school doing with AI? And it's an initiative both the dean wanted to approach, as well as the director of technology at the school, the CTO.
One of the directors might be to be involved in cross-campus efforts to promote, kind of
potentially, or open up the opportunity for a discussion. And if that's the only thing it is, that's great too, So we'll see. Yeah.
Exciting times. So
yeah. Look forward to talk to you later. You work here, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll come. Yeah, great. Thanks for attending.
Yeah, so you can share your.
Yeah.
Demo for people online or it's for YouTube recording.
Okay, great. Can I get out of this or leave it open?
You can get out of that. You can get
This.
whatever you need.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, we're recording. Since we hooked up his laptop, it was no one on YouTube could see the demo.
All right, if you're still online, I'm going to run through a demo for you. Thanks for joining and sticking around. So come to the login page here. And as I was talking earlier, we've got the sign up.
Sharing stuff. Share.
Great. Once again, this is the dashboard. When you come up to it, here's the sign up modal. You put your first, last name, email, and your password. It'll allow you to sign up for an account. If you already have an account, you can sign into it here, but if you also forgot your password, you can reset it as well. All of these are being facilitated by Supabase and their authentication protocol. Before that, all the sites are locked down, or pages on the site are locked down. So we'll go ahead and hit sign in here. And then log in here. Okay. So here's the landing page, and like I said, everything here has been designed from the ground up. There's two ways to navigate, the top navigation and the bottom. So we go into the student directory, and we'll be able to see the students here. Everything kind of bubbles up from the ground up when you search. And then we'll go back to the dashboard, and we'll go to user management, and it'll bring up the users of the site. Once again, we'll go back to the dashboard here, and then a room configuration. And these are 12 rooms that we've identified already, and they're existing at Richmond. And then here's the room 101 layout. I'll just pop through a couple to kind of let you see the difference. 300's got traditional tables across. And then, 172 is just a square. But this is a good one to demo. This is some directions of how to use the site. If you go into the search for a student, you just drag and drop. Once you drop them on the seat, it becomes green. It's an assigned seat. And then until you're done with building your seating chart, if you've made a mistake, you just click and then it removes that. If you hit save here, the professor or the admin would fill out these data points, the last name, class name, semester, year, and section, and hit save, and it will be in their chart view. At this point, you hit print. And one thing I was mentioning earlier, there's a bug somehow, or it's print protocol, I'm not sure, but it makes it on 2 pages. So if you just hit current page, you get around that. And then you can scale things up a little bit to kind of make sure it fills out that page. And you have the face and the name. I'm going to go ahead and cancel here, and then hit PDF, and then the same thing happens when you just print the PDF. It'll save it as a file instead of in the printing it to your printer. So we'll remove all these people here. There's no need to. If you just get out of it, it won't save. Just clear. And then we'll go back. And then we'll go to the charts page. And then here's where I can see all the charts, both mine and everyone else's. I'm going to focus on this one that I created in August and then updated in January. You just hit view. It'll bring that chart up. You go ahead and hit print, and you'll see this just like we did before. We'll hit cancel, print a PDF, same thing. And that kind of gives you an understanding of what, if you want to put in another student here, you certainly can. You just drag and drop and then resave, and it'll save a new version of that file for you. Go back here, and then we're back to the charts page. And once again, there's a little button here. If you hover over, it'll show your name, your access, and then your level there. So if we go back to the dashboard, it's always sort of kind of the anchor back to home. And that was a walkthrough of the entire site. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I appreciate you sharing it. And then we'll go ahead and sign out, and then everything will be signed out, and everything's back to being completely locked down. Once again, thanks for taking your time to join my presentation and view it. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Stop sharing. All right, cool.